Welcome, Your Parents' Attic, episode number 3. I'm Glenn.
I'm Greg.
And, okay, you're going to do that the whole show.
I hope so. No, I'm
not. And we are extremely excited about this episode. Well, we always are to do this show, but
I love everything and everyone.
Especially from the 80s and 90s, like the show is basically about. Today's episode is about Nickelodeon's SNICK, which was a 2-hour block of time that was live, well, not live, but aired every Saturday on Nickelodeon from 1992 until 2004. But today we're going to be talking about like the early 90s version of SNICK.
The real SNICK.
And we'll get to the parts where SNICK kind of, wavered off from the original classics of the Nickelodeon programming. So, geez, SNICK is just like a lot of these things we talk about, near and dear to my heart, because every Saturday I was in front of the TV watching Nickelodeon, watching these shows, and we're going to go over a majority of the ones that we love. But I want to know your favorite show. Mine was Are You Afraid of the Dark? The last show, last half an hour block of SNICK, and usually
for part of it, for the record.
Yeah. For the part that we enjoyed SNICK, the most enjoyable.
There was the tail end of it that was Roundhouse, but fair enough. I'll give you Are You Afraid of the Dark? It was the emotional ending of the night.
Yeah, it was an ending to where, looking back on it now, the show was kind of cheesy. It was like the Friday the 13th cheesiness of the graphics and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it was the part, at least, being 10, 11 years old, some of these episodes were scary enough to where you went to bed and you had some... You didn't want to go to bed right away because you're kind of scared. But dude, SNICK, I mean, I'm sure you were watching SNICK all the time, and we have our favorites for shows, too.
I was for a little bit, and then I was out partying with hot chicks.
All right.
But, I mean, up until maybe 94, I was watching it.
Okay.
Maybe 96. I don't know. I don't remember when I started partying with hot chicks. My favorite, personally, was The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Yeah.
There was just something about... It was kind of like a grunge kids show, which was weird because if you really think about it, a lot of the humor is really off-center. The words they came up with and like the Krebs star everything, it was just this weird. I can't even really think of the word for it. It was a grungy, weird show, but it was really funny, and it had a great heart to it, and it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot different than the other shows on Nickelodeon.
Yes.
Where it was more, Adventures of Pete and Pete were about the kids, but it felt like it was a little bit more mature than the kids featured in the show, which was different than later SNICK shows like All That and Kenan and Kel, which were easy kid-driven comedy shows. But like earlier on, it was kind of a little edgy, Pete and Pete.
Well, and it was edgy, but it wasn't wasn't push the envelope edgy.
Yeah.
It was edgy just because it was different.
Right.
They didn't deal with mature subject matter. It wasn't there wasn't any foul language, there wasn't any real violence, there wasn't anything to make it a quote unquote mature show. But it wasn't something, I'm sure we could pick people off the street that are our age and ask them about Pete, and half of them would probably say they didn't like it. Yeah. They'd probably say they didn't understand it.
Right.
Which is a really interesting thing about that time and about SNICK, because if you look at the other stuff that was on SNICK, there's Clarissa Explains It All, which that's mainstream. It's mainstream.
Yeah.
There's Ren and Stimpy, which is kind of the opposite of Pete and Pete in that there's a bunch of weird stuff going on.
Weird, especially looking at the back in adult, you're like, why?
Right. How
was this broadcasted to a kid's block of shows, on Saturday night?
Sure.
And you had like Roundhouse, which was, comedy alternative.
Yeah, there was music. There was more music to it than I remembered.
Yeah. And you had Secret World of Alex Mack, which is more, for kids. And then this show, we're going to mix in a bunch of Did You Know facts, because there is almost people that are connected to shows today to the early 2000s, and especially in the 90s for SNICK. But people that have gone on to other shows, there's a connections. There are paying homage to these shows, to other books, to other movies, to characters. So we're gonna spill it all here on Your Parents' Attic for this episode, because we have a ton of shows to get into that are favorites, that were featured on SNICK, especially in the early 90s to the late 90s, and that's a kind of our favorite part of SNICK. We'll mix in some old ads from SNICK, and we have our very first ever commercial break featuring some random commercials from the time period of the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
You can follow the show on Twitter, Parents Attic Pod, or on Facebook, and you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and the Google Play Store. And make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment and a rating. It takes 2 seconds to do. We greatly appreciate it. You can listen to all our past shows from Crystal Pepsi, AOL Dial-Up, listen to our trailer, and other shows we have done past this one. So let's get into it. Greg, episode number 3, Nickelodeon SNICK.
The time has come. The big orange couch is in place. So hop on and
Greg, most of these shows, these aren't 200 episode shows. These are shows that range from 36 episodes like Pete and Pete to a little less than 100 like Are You Afraid of the Dark, but they live in our minds and our hearts for a very long time after, because of the nostalgia factor. Not like Seinfeld and like Friends, who have hundreds of shows. But you brought up a great point before the show, is that we yearn for these shows because they're from our childhood, but also because it's very, very hard to get a hold of these reruns.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And the interesting thing about that era of Nickelodeon is it's really the only one that I can think of where it hasn't been beaten into the ground with syndication and reruns and DVDs and all those kinds of commercialization possibilities. They put out 2 seasons of Pete and Pete on DVD. The third one was canceled, I think, a week before it came out. It's all sitting in a warehouse somewhere, printed up. The DVD commentaries are done. The art's there. It's packaged. They just won't sell it. And it's interesting because you brought up Friends and Seinfeld, and those are kind of the 2 best examples I can think of, where you can turn your TV on at any point in the day and those shows are on. So they've lost a bit of their, I don't want to say magic because that sounds kind of pretentious, but they kind of have. They've lost, you're still going to see the episode where Jerry's got the puffy shirt, or you're still going to see, the whatever. I never watched Friends, so I can't make an analogy for Friends, but you're always going to be able to see those. There's always going to be a way. And SNICK in general, I mean, look up Roundhouse on YouTube. There's almost nothing. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but not, for as many episodes as they made, it's not there. So that, again, pretentious word, magic, it's still there for that kind of stuff. And we all remember our childhoods, and we remember sitting down to watch that stuff and going, holy crap, I gotta get inside. SNICK starts in a half an hour.
Yeah.
And you remember it opening up with that big orange couch, in the middle of the woods. And you remember the theme song for Clarissa Explains It All kicking in, and that was Saturday night until I started partying with hot chicks. And that's something that nowadays is lost. That doesn't exist. There's no shows that are on television now where it's just going to be, there's little bits and pieces that you're going to be able to find in the future. Everything is going to be available at our fingertips for the rest of our lives. For the rest of civilization, really.
Yeah. That's a great point, because just search Roundhouse on the YouTube, and there's barely episodes that pop up. There's a few, VHS quality, obviously, the show, but there isn't, a YouTube channel dedicated to every episode that they've dubbed off a DVD or Blu-ray. It's very, very, and I'm sure maybe at my parents' house I have some SNICK, shows. A block here from October 1994 on tape somewhere. I wanted to tape, but yeah, it's very sparingly, and there was only 52 episodes of Roundhouse.
I didn't even think there was that many. Yeah,
and these shows are just very, very few, but these are very popular. They have a cult following, and they were popular as kids. And you mentioned, hey, 8 o'clock came, and back in the summertime when we're allowed to stay up late, because of no school. I'll be outside playing baseball until the sun went down. But on Saturday nights, like 7:30, come in, clean up, put your PJs on, and sit in front of the TV until 10 o'clock watching SNICK. And you're right, and we'll get into TGIF, that block later on. On Friday night. So Friday night was TGIF, Saturday was SNICK, and that was your entertainment, in front of the TV. Which, you're right, there isn't. I mean, to me, there isn't that nostalgia of a show or a block of shows that will live on 20 years from now that are present day. It's
right.
Just because you're right, everything will be at our fingertips just like that. And these shows, it's very, very hard to find on dailymotion.com or the bowels of a hidden YouTube channel of these shows, because it's just hidden. It's just not available at all. But it's cool. Because
and it adds to the legend, really, because you can't nowadays, if you see something fun, you can have everybody come over and you can show it to them within 3 minutes.
Yep.
There you go. Now you know how cool this is. That kind of stuff, you can't do it. You can just tell them. You can find little clips and bits and pieces, but they'll never be able to. They'll never know it like you did.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I mean, that is the definition of cool to me. So,
well, Greg, let's get into, before we get into the segment where we spit out a lot of facts about SNICK and the characters and whether they've gone on and just different facts about the show. There's just some right now, conversation-wise.
Yeah.
Some that will blow your mind or blow our listeners' mind, because these are facts that a lot of people don't know about these shows. And with the Clarissa Explains It All, they were going to release a musical album called Clarissa and the Straitjackets. And
I really hope it was Los Straitjackets just backing her. There's like 4 people who are listening to this who will know who Los Straitjackets is. It kind of would make my life if that's what it was.
And the first single was going to be "This Is What Nana Means," which is homage to their theme song.
Is that like hoo-ha?
Nah. I don't know, but that's what. This is little tidbits about like some spin-offs. It's little Alex Mack, which was The Secret World of Alex Mack, the show. That was originally going to be for a male lead character. Decided to go with the female. We all know Alex Mack here in Cleveland. He was in Cleveland.
I was going to say.
He was in Cleveland as a center. Yeah. His name was Alex Mack. And when you hear that name, immediately you think of Alex Mack back in our heyday, who I had a complete crush on. I'm going to admit Alex Mack. And
wait, what?
Had a crush on Alex Mack. Didn't you?
No.
No?
No. I didn't watch that show. I don't know.
I always thought she was cute.
I always wished it was The Secret Life of Kevin Mack. I thought it just would have been more interesting.
Only people in Cleveland would get that reference.
Unfortunately, he can't transform into a Super Bowl trophy.
Now, Jessica Alba was on The Secret World of Alex Mack for a few episodes. Very, very few.
Who?
Jessica Alba?
Who's that?
You don't know who?
I've never heard of her.
Come on.
I've never heard of Jessica Alba.
Well, she was all over when they did a DVD release in 2007. Instead of Alex Mack, the character, being featured all over the DVDs, they featured Jessica Alba banking off her success following the show, even though she was only on a few episodes of The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Did they re-edit the show so that she was Alex Mack?
Hey, trying to make that money, man.
Yeah. I still don't know who that is, though.
There were the E.G. Daily, the voice of Tommy Pickles,
sure,
and Rugrats, played Dottie in Pee-wee's Big Adventures.
Dottie the Hottie, yeah.
And there's plenty more of little tidbits about Are You Afraid of the Dark and Clarissa that we're going to get into next. Final fact for you: the Midnight Society kids on Are You Afraid of the Dark, they were not allowed to be shown lighting the campfire because they didn't want kids at home doing the same thing. They didn't want houses being burnt down or woods being burnt down. They didn't not show the kids lighting. They did show them how to put it out. And
what was that? Pre or post Beavis and Butthead? Just for I'm not even being funny. Like for clarity's sake, because I mean that was the whole thing with Beavis and Butthead was they're like they're gonna burn the houses down, but the cartoon character.
Well, Beavis and Butthead was from, and we'll do a whole show on these characters. We're from 93 to 97.
Okay, so potentially it was right around the same time.
Yeah, and
although Are You Afraid of the Dark might have started earlier.
Yeah, 92, okay. And they were sporadically till 2000. So
wow.
So yeah, but they didn't want these kids being shown, which was kudos to Nickelodeon for doing that. But that's just a little fact that thinking back, like, oh yeah,
forget that mom and dad have cigarette lighters. Can't show them how to make a campfire though.
Keaton and Kel, all of that, they were kind of like the second volume 2 of SNICK.
Yeah, they were terrible.
It was just awful. I mean, I'm sure listeners, and let us know on our Facebook page and Twitter, when we think of SNICK, I think of, the staple lineup with Carissa and Ren and Stimpy and Roundhouse, Are You Afraid of the Dark, and even, Alex Mack. But then when it got into all that, and Keaton and Kel, and the Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, which were kind of making people like, who? Remember that? Like, in the late 90s, I kind of tuned out.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I watched that because I have 2 younger sisters, and they were getting to SNICK, and they would watch Rugrats, which I wouldn't mind Rugrats. But, yeah, man, like, I would say there's a good first half of SNICK, and then the second half is awful. Kind of the Cleveland Browns play a great first half and an awful second half. But dude, yeah, I
or the reverse
enjoyed
of the
first
Indians
half
in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's first half. The earlier part of SNICK were great, and that's what I think people yearn for the most when it comes to SNICK was those shows.
Yeah. From
like 92 until like 96, those block of shows. Like every episode, well, most of them, we're going to talk about the demise of this product, show, movie, food, and in this case, this block of 2 hours of goodness that made our childhood great had a pretty awful ending because in 1999, the SNICK House SNICK was revamped to the SNICK House, which was hosted by Nick Gannon.
He sucks.
And you had the Amanda Show.
That sucked.
You had Double Dare 2000. You had 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd. You had All That was still there. No One Knows Best, Caitlin's Way. And then 2001, SpongeBob was a part of the SNICK lineup. But, I mean, these are probably the time blocks of SNICK that we don't remember that much.
I was still partying with hot chicks.
You were.
In college.
And this was in 2000, 2001. And I was getting ready to go to college. And if I was back to being 10 years old and I had to watch Nick Gannon host this block of terrible shows for 2 hours,
you probably would have loved it. I mean, that's who it was. Let's be realistic here. That's who it was aimed at. And if we were that age, if we were 11 in 2000 or 2001, we probably loved it.
No,
because that was exactly
not.
That's who it was aimed at.
I would not have liked to see Little Romeo and Master P in my SNICK lineup. I mean, come on.
Maybe you would have.
All grown up, like the Amanda Show.
Isn't All Grown Up Rugrats?
I don't remember. It was spin-off of Rugrats. So I mean, and they had Cat Dog. I like Cat Dog.
I don't know what Cat Dog is.
Cat Dog. Cat Dog was an animal that was half cat, half dog.
You don't say.
And it was good. I enjoyed that show. And that was in the late.
So you're that guy in college watching Cat Dog?
No, that was that was earlier. That was like the best late part of SNICK was Cat Dog was a part of that. But I mean, you had Invader Zim be a part, the Brothers Garcia.
I remember Invader Zim just because that was before it wasn't cool to shop at Hot Topic like it is now. Wait. It's not cool. It's still not cool to shop at Hot Topic, but back then it was okay, and they had just tons of Invader Zim stuff, and I would just walk around just puzzled.
Well, Hot Topic is cool for wrestling shirts.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I haven't been to. I think I've been to the mall once in the last year, and I stayed far away from.
You're not the only one.
That's not true. The gym I go to is at the mall.
Malls can be another episode of the for this show. Malls.
Yeah.
I mean that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's maybe we write that
coming
down
up with
for
stuff
our
on the
list.
fly here. Yeah.
But SNICK went downhill, and in 2013 they kind of trying to bring SNICK back with the 90s or all that, dubbed SNICkiversary, and they had the original lineup of Carissa, Ren and Stimpy Show, Are You Afraid of the Dark, with Roundhouse being replaced with All That.
Yeah. See, that doesn't count.
Yeah, you got to have Roundhouse in there. They didn't.
All that is Mad TV for kids.
Yes.
It's not. They wanted to be SNL so badly they couldn't even pull off In Living Color.
I did not
They
like
were Mad TV.
Keaton and Kel. Was not a fan of those whatsoever. It just wasn't funny.
Yeah.
It just was so bad, and now these guys are torturing us with SNL. Keaton, is it
Yeah,
Keaton
and you know what?
SNL?
I hated Keenan on SNL for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I finally came around to him, and now I think that he's a complete genius.
Oh boy.
I'm guessing it's probably just Stockholm syndrome.
Well, it took you about 20 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say it took a really long time.
20 years.
What's up with that is one of the funniest things ever. They don't do it anymore, but that was one of the best skits in the history of the show. And Kel, I'm sure, is probably working at a fast food restaurant.
Probably.
Because he liked Good Burger so much that he's just like, I'm just going to work at McDonald's.
And they spun off the SNICK show, Keaton and Kel, to, all that. They were in All That too, right?
Yeah, All That spun off
Keaton and Kel.
Keaton and Kel, and then Keaton and Kel spun off into the Good Burger movie.
So they had that awful movie.
Yeah.
Hour and a half, probably, of just awfulness, just shoved down our throats.
I worked with a guy who was basically Kel from Good Burger. It was really
I feel
weird.
bad for you. Well, the end of SNICK officially came in the 2004-2005, and they dropped the SNICK name. It was
a mercy killing.
Transitioned to TNICK Saturday Night,
Jeez.
which is for teens. And they had All Grown Up with Romeo, All That, and The Amanda Show, which featured Amanda Bynes, who was from All That, and they thought she was funny, therefore gave her her own show on SNICK, and that was the downfall of SNICK and the final lineup, which was in 2004 in August. So
I remember
12 years.
I remember when that happened. I remember people trying to talk about The Amanda Show like it was funny. And granted, I was like 24, so but I remember people like trying to explain it to me, and it was like somebody trying to explain, I imagine, heroin, where it's just like, no, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
That really, how do you, really? You don't understand that this sound? No, I hear the words coming out of your mouth. It's not funny.
And
it's not, she has lobster hands? I don't get it. That's not funny.
She was not good at movies. She's the Man was not very, very good. And
She's the Man?
I think that's what it was. She's the Man.
Isn't that the movie where the guy pretends to be a women's basketball player because he can't play in the? No.
No. Amanda Bynes. She's the Man, which was about her trying to make a soccer team as a man. Or it's bad. It's bad.
I think I'd watch Good Burger instead.
It was a teenage girl who enters her brother's school in his place, pretending to be male in order to play with a boys' soccer team.
Why wouldn't she just play on the girls' soccer team?
Well, you know what? That's what made her crazy. These bad episodes of The Amanda Show and these terrible movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the end of SNICK. That was the end in 2004. But let's be honest, people. The real SNICK that we all love, it was a good 3 to 4 year run with that lineup. And that's what we love, not all these crappy shows that spun off, try to build. But yeah, they try to bring in the 90s, all of that with some of the shows coming back with the original cast. But, like I mentioned in the facts, a lot of these young actors did not make a lot of money whatsoever. And you don't see these DVDs coming out, like you said. So these people aren't making money even, 20 years from now from DVD sales because... back then they were just kids, non-union, not making any money off the sales. like Clarissa, like I mentioned, was making $150 per episode,
right?
Which is nothing considering they only had a handful of episodes. They weren't having hundreds of episodes, so yeah, well, it's crazy.
The other thing is, which we talked about a little bit before the show, the contracts that they signed. Melissa Joan Hart made $150 an episode. The problem is now, and this happened. There was a Writers Guild strike probably 10 years ago, and part of the reason for that strike was with streaming becoming prevalent, with DVD sales becoming as big as they were back then. None of the contracts for stuff, even 5 years before that, included royalty payments on that kind of media. So the problem is with stuff like, and I'm sure this is a very rudimentary thing, and I'm sure somebody can point out that there's an even better reason than what I'm about to say, but all of that stuff, none of that is in the contracts. You can't put Pete and Pete up for streaming because you'd have to go back and renegotiate with every single person who was on that show, and then have to pay them out of the money you made for streaming it. And when it was something that was so low budget, I'm sure at some point it's almost cheaper to just let it, or it's almost a better business deal to just let it sit in a vault somewhere.
And the price to stream it and to pay everybody would probably be 100 times more than wherever they paid for episodes when they did it 20 years ago.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And I know people would love it, and would it people who don't have Netflix, would they jump on Netflix to watch Pete and Pete? Pay that $10 a month. I mean, would it be astronomical enough to outweigh the cost of these contracts and streaming rights and all the money that goes into it? I don't think it's worth it. And you're right. I think it's just to be out there for people who to find it randomly going through VHS tapes, put it on YouTube and let it live that way. Kind of like you said, like a cult kind of, cryptic following. If you're lucky enough to find it on YouTube, it's like hitting the jackpot. Yeah.
Well, and there's some people that definitely help. Like Danny Tamborelli, who played Little Pete on Pete and Pete. He's got his own sketch comedy group. He's got he's got like 3 different bands he's in. He's a stand-up comic. And I'm sure a lot of the publicity he gets is just from the fact that he's now a cult figure.
Oh yeah.
If you could watch that stuff everywhere, I'm sure people would just go and be like, it's the kid from Pete and Pete. Show me the tattoo. You're keeping the audience select, which, I'm sure his rent check and his bills would love it if the audience was a little less select.
Yeah.
But it's going to keep him in that kind of business for a long time.
And, I would love to have kids, who are now, 10, 12 years old to watch these shows that we watched, and, to pass it down to have a new generation of, watchers, viewers to respect what we watch as kids. But, it'd be nice to have that. But then again, it's much, it's easier said than done. Hey, put it on Netflix or put it on Hulu. It's a lot more stuff is involved than just, hey, okay, it's released to everybody.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I don't think kids nowadays would get a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know that you could sit a kid in front of Ren and Stimpy and have them understand what's going on. Well, I mean, and there's not a lot to understand that's going on, but it was a little too random and of its time to translate to kids nowadays. I think that there's not enough structure to an episode that they'd understand it. Or like Pete and Pete would be probably the most boring thing a kid ever watched. Because there's no explosions, there's no fighting, there's no nothing. Like, it's kids sitting around talking and weird things happen. Are You Afraid of the Dark might work.
Yeah.
Maybe. Clarissa might work on like Fox Family.
Yeah.
But I don't think that stuff could ever translate to a new generation.
Really quick before we wrap it up, how many episodes of Ren and Stimpy were there? Can you give me a guess?
Are we just talking about on Nickelodeon, or once it switched over to Spike?
Well, there were 5 seasons.
Okay.
Total.
Okay.
Of Ren and Stimpy from 91 to 95.
Okay, so we're talking OG run.
Yeah.
Ren and Stimpy. I'm gonna go with 38.
52.
Okay.
So there's 52 episodes out there of Ren and Stimpy, who That's like the, Are You Afraid of the Dark was my favorite, but Ren and Stimpy lives on till today. And there's plenty of, video games for Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah,
and,
they were all
Sega.
terrible, but yeah.
Yeah, all of them were terrible. But I mean, they really banked on Ren and Stimpy. And that moved to MTV. And I think I mentioned this in the past episode. As a kid, not allowed to watch MTV. But when it moved, Ren and Stimpy moved to MTV, we were allowed for that half an hour to watch Ren and Stimpy on MTV and nothing else. But considering what Ren and Stimpy was, it was kind of a head scratch. We're like, we're allowed to watch this, but I'm not allowed to watch anything else. But I think it was more for the music videos and not, being at 12 years old, not seeing enough sex on the good old tube. But yeah, that's SNICK, man. That's SNICK. It was fun to re-dig up all these video clips of what we can find on the internet, because a lot of the themes are out there, but like shows, full episodes are very, very, very hard to find.
Yeah.
If you find them, post them to the Facebook. We'd love to watch them as well. If there's a secret YouTube channel that has them labeled as something weird so they don't get flagged and take it down, let us know. We would love to watch and reminisce as well watching, because like I said, those are not really out there that much, these full episodes of these SNICK shows. All right. Follow the show on Twitter, Parents Attic Pod. We're on Facebook. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. We're on all the podcast platforms. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, rate us. We would love it. Trying to get up on iTunes. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your parents about your Parents Attic, because not only does it affect your childhood if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, your parents as well.
Yeah. So
give them the feed. Get them to subscribe on iTunes or on Stitcher. And we're on every single phone device. You can listen to the show. Anything you want to add, Greg?
No, man. I got everything, I think.
You're falling in love with this Barry White thing, huh?
No, it's awful. No, I just, SNICK was something really cool.
Yeah.
And, since we've been talking about doing this episode, I kind of went through and dove headfirst back into it. And there's a lot of really great stuff there. And if you have a way to check that stuff out, you really should, because it's a lot of fun, and it's, we're a nostalgia based show, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to find anything that I'd recommend as far as what nostalgia means to me, like I do with SNICK and with the stuff that was on SNICK, at least the early SNICK.
And it still lives on with us today, and I'm sure people who are, I remember that show, will hit up YouTube and try to find these shows on there. So you're welcome when it comes to reliving your childhood, especially with SNICK every Saturday night. So this has been Your Parents' Attic, and we'll talk to you next week.
Turn the lights off when you come downstairs, okay? We're not made out of money.
This summer, coming to a supermarket near you.